Happy New Year. I'm not sure if it is a Kenyan greeting, but the sound of it is great. Happy, blessed New Year. So last week we celebrated all the Adams and Eves who triumphed the battles, the brushes, and some bruises of the year 2022. So this year we invite you in the words of the whole hymn, Onward Christian Soldiers, marching as to the war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the Royal Master leads the battle, leads the foe. Forward into the battle. See his banners go. I'm sure some of you guys, hymn lovers, are already singing Onward Christian Soldiers. And that's our call to you this year. Onward Christian Soldiers. This is Adam's Cave, a space where we are candid, concise, and clear in our conversation. I'm your host, Kissinger Kiprotich, and it's always my absolute joy to have you on board. So welcome to the conversation. You can go to our WhatsApp line, 0717 400 555, or just go to comment section on Hop TV or Hop FM, or you can go to Twitter, #AdamsCave, #AdamsCave. So we previously discussed the roles of a man. We said he's a provider, a prophet, protector, a priest. But what's really the role of Adam outside his family, outside the society, or outside the kingdom? What is his role? So welcome to the topic of today, Adam, the marketplace priest. Adam, the marketplace priest. And today I'm extremely privileged to host a man. He's a husband and a father, an astute business operations guru. He's the director of operations at Christian Broadcasting Network, not CITAM, CBS. It is Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN, Mr. Kim H.Mitchell. Welcome to have Adam's Cave, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just a great privilege to be here.
Welcome to, no, I should say welcome to Africa and welcome to Adam's Cave.
Thank you very much. I love Africa and I love Adam's Cave.
Welcome on board. Is it your first time in Kenya?
No, I've been coming here pretty regularly since 1998, or maybe 97, yeah.
Then Karibu. You must have known that word already by now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, welcome to Adam's Cave. This is where we discuss matters affecting men and the people they love so dearly. And we are so delighted to have you on board. So just in case somebody's tuning in, who is Kim?
Who is Kim? Well, my name is Kim Mitchell, and as you shared, I work for Christian Broadcasting Network. I have for over 30 years now. I grew up in the state of Oregon in the United States on the West Coast, and I went to school there, and then I went to graduate school in Arizona. Then I went to Taiwan, and I wanted to learn Mandarin Chinese. I thought I would do that in a couple years and then go back to the US and make lots of money, but I ended up needing more time to learn Mandarin. And I recommitted my life to the Lord during that time and joined a local church and at the time and met a lady that I married, a Taiwanese lady. So after about 7 or 8 years, she wanted to go to Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia for a master's in education. And so we packed up our things and went back, for me, back to the US, for her the first time. And ended up in Virginia Beach where I know very few people and was looking for something international to do. And the opportunity came up to work for CBN. And at first I didn't want to work for CBN. I wanted to work in business. But what CBN was doing around the world, even though now it seems quite small, but it was really very impressive to me. And so I thought, okay, well, while my wife is going to school, I'll work there for a couple of years. And now it's been 30 years. So, and we, and we raised one daughter, natural daughter that we had, and then we actually adopted 2 boys from Ukraine as well. So that's kind of our family.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. How old are the boys of the Ukraine?
Well, they were 5 and 8 when we adopted them. Okay. Now they're 19 and 21 or so.
Oh, passionate. That's amazing.
They're independent.
Okay, so are they moved now to the US, your sons?
Oh yeah, no, they moved with us. I mean, they came with us at ages 5 and 8. That was in 2009, and then so they became part of our household. And now the older boy is in the U.S. Army in North Carolina, and the younger boy works in Wisconsin. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
What prompted you to move with us to the U.S.?
Well, we tried to have a child for quite a few years and weren't able to. And then finally we had our daughter, Renee, and thought, okay, now it'll start happening more regularly, and it didn't. So we really wanted more children, and because CBN was very, very active in Ukraine, and we had a ministry to orphans and orphanages, so it just seemed like a natural place to go, and it wasn't an easy process. It was like almost a 2-year process, and with a lot of ups and downs, very emotional, very difficult, but the end result was great.
Wow. Congratulations, Kim. We had a conversation sometime here in Adam's Cave discussing adoption, and we had amazing stories. And it's so nice to hear you share that amazing story of adoption and raising men.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure the great men being in the army and that kind of thing. Thank you. I think that's truly amazing. I'm sure we'll come back to that if time allows. But what else do you do for CBN?
Well, I'm Director of International Operations, and my role has shifted over the years. But now I focus on our ministries in Africa, Europe, what used to be the Soviet Union, and like Middle East and Pakistan. We do a few things there in those areas. So, but Africa and Europe are probably my biggest focuses.
Okay. When you say focuses, what is the real thing that you really want to do in Africa?
Okay, in Africa, CBN has been very, very active here since the 1980s.
Yes.
Many of you might remember a gentleman named Victor Oladokun. Victor did a news show for us. It aired here in Kenya, and then he later did a program called Turning Point, which is now TPI, and of course now Muiwa is the host. But through those programs that Victor did, through the 700 Club and Superbook, the original Superbook, we had a very significant TV presence starting in the 1980s. And then 1990s, late 1990s, we began to set up some offices in key places. So today we have, our main offices are in Dakar, Senegal for French Africa. We have an office in Accra, Ghana for Ghana. Abuja, Nigeria is for all of English West Africa. And then we have Nairobi here for East Africa, and Cape Town for Southern Africa.
Wow.
So I manage those offices.
No, it's exciting. Yeah. I think some of the older generation would remember 700 Club so closely and passionately, because I think for a long time, that was one of the only stations, or rather one of the key Christian programs that people would benefit. So remember that, and Superbook has really been an amazing product that we also enjoy and have our children watch.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
But I also did notice you're Kenyan because you do marathon.
Oh, yeah.
What's the story to that?
Well, to be frank, it's a little embarrassing, but yes. When I turned 40 years old a few years ago, I found I was putting on some weight because I love to eat, and as I travel around the world, one of my favorite things is to eat the local food. And then my wife is a great cook. We eat a lot of Chinese food. So I was putting on weight, and the question became, do I want to stop eating or do something else? And so I chose something else and started to do distance running. Yeah, and since then, in fact, in December, I completed my 50th marathon or ultra marathon.
50th?
Yeah.
Wow.
But when you say, when I say completed, you might have this idea of me running really fast like a Kenyan, and no, that's not the case. And it's slowed down a lot over the years. But
Yes.
yeah.
But I think the whole idea first is to finish.
To finish.
I think it's not even to win fast, because marathon is totally hectic and everything else. And we encourage men just finish fast.
Yeah. No, that's it. And it's really setting your own goals.
Yes.
I don't need to compete with other people, because I know there's always going to be people that are faster than I am, and there's people that are slower, and that's fine. They're just out there, and that's what it's about. So, yeah.
But interesting again, and we'll still be discussing Adam as a priest, that you've also used the marathon experience to even raise money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
There in the U.S. actually, there's a lot of people who that's why they run marathons, or one of the principal things. Because of my travel schedule, I'm not able to commit to those kind of programs so much, and so usually I just register on my own for a marathon that works for me schedule-wise. But last year, on I think it was like the 2nd of April, I did a half marathon in London. It was my first time running outside the U.S. in a formal event like that. But it was a London Monuments half marathon, and they cleared different streets in downtown London, in the cities, in the center, and it was all for charity. So everybody running was running for some charity, and I was running with the CBN Europe team, and we were raising money for Ukraine, which of course is a big passion for me. So yeah, that was a very special experience, and it didn't rain, so that was a great day.
No, congratulations, and it's pretty nice to hear that, especially using your passion to help other people.
For sure.
And that is part of a conversation we shall have. You mentioned about 30 years of, you said you didn't really you wanted to go into business at the beginning and ended up in CBN for 30 years now. How has your journey been? Why did you stick so long, if I can use that word?
Well, I guess there's different reasons. I think the simple answer is I never felt the Lord call me to move elsewhere. I mean, there were opportunities and I considered them, but I've just been very excited about CBN. And as I said, when I joined, I joined because I was very impressed with what the international department was doing, and it's only grown since then. But one of the projects that really impressed me before I came onto CBN and I just moved to Virginia Beach was they were actually doing a co-production with the Soviet Union's #1 station that covered all the time zones of the Soviet Union and even into Eastern Europe and Mongolia. And they were doing a co-production, and it was still the Soviet Union at the time. It was only later that the Soviet Union fell. And I thought, wow, that's amazing that you can have that kind of impact through the airwaves. And then, of course, another aspect of CBN is Operation Blessing, where we're ministering, through humanitarian projects to really the least among us, the people that are the neediest. And when you combine those two things, it's very special. And since then, we've kind of added a third prong to what we do called Orphans Promise. And Orphans Promise, as it sounds, it started out as being something really focused on orphans. Now it's become orphans and vulnerable children and single mothers. So it's broadened a bit, but still the root of it is reaching out and helping orphans, which is really my heart too. And interestingly, that was started by a co-host of the 700 Club, who many of you, I think, will know, Terry Mewson. Yes. And Terry, in her 50s, she had a show on a CBN show called Living the Life, and she interviewed a lady that was going to Ukraine to adopt, and she said, well, when you come back, let us know how it went. And through that lady, she learned about 3 girls that really needed to be adopted, because once you age out of the system there at 16 years of age, you're out on the street. It's really bad. And so when Terry heard about them, she was thinking and praying, well, Lord, send somebody to adopt those girls. And the Lord pretty much turned it on her and said, you go adopt them. And you can imagine, here she is in her 50s, and she said, oh, well, maybe, but I don't think my husband would go for it. And he said, yes, let's do it. So they adopted those girls through a very long process. And as they were leaving, or soon after the girls came to the U.S., they said, well, Mom, what about the children that are left behind? What about our friends that don't get adopted? And so Terry really took that to heart and said, we need to do something to help, because you're never going to be able to adopt all of them, but can we help those that are on the ground? And so we started the Orphans Project Promise. It's now in over 60 countries, but we started in Ukraine, and it's still the biggest place where we work.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Operation Blessing is more to do with reaching out to the hungry, the widows and orphans as well.
Yeah, and not as much children now, because we have Orphans Promise, so they're more focused on life-changing surgeries. We do a lot of water wells. We do medical brigades in different places where they don't have adequate medical attention, and of course a lot of disaster relief as well. So when you combine all those together, I just think it's an amazing organization. Yeah.
No, it's amazing, and I think we're discussing today Adam as a priest, And I think for a long time, Kim, most people would only see ministry essentially as either you're preaching or you're singing or you're on in the feast. But I think what you're sharing is an amazing story, because I think it's the book of James that talks about true religion, reaching out to the people who are less privileged. And hearing you talk about adopting two children, hearing you talk about, reaching out to Ukraine right now, especially because of what's happening and everything else, that becomes a very special country. But what has prompted your heart? Maybe the Lord could have. What is really passion that maybe other men can learn from you to reach out or minister in a different way? Not singing and preaching. Not that you're saying singing and preaching is lesser, but I think what you are doing is amazing.
Yeah, if I could, I would like to give a lot of credit to CBN's founder, Dr. Pat Robertson, who just recently stepped down as host of the 700 Club. It was host really for more than 50 years. But he founded CBN, and the principles, the guiding principles are the call words, I guess you could say, are excellence, integrity, and innovation. And I think he really personifies all of those. And it's something that wasn't necessarily, you didn't see it always in Christian ministry. But that's been the call words, the things that we live by at CBN and try to exemplify. And when you bring that to ministry, I just think the ministry can be so much more effective. And certainly in using the resources wisely, looking for new opportunities, and doing everything with a high degree of integrity. I saw that in Dr. Robertson, and I had the privilege of traveling internationally with him for quite a few years, and just to see how he interacted with people overseas and the opportunities he'd get so excited about. One example was we were in India, and this was back in the late 1990s, I think, and there was an opportunity to air Superbook, the original Superbook at the time, across all of India on the national TV station. And he was just so excited by that. It was to see that up close and personal, that that was truly his passion. So I have to say I learned a lot from Dr. Robertson, and that was one of the things that attracted me to come to CBN and to stay at CBN.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Kim, are there personal experiences that you have enjoyed in this journey, or maybe not even enjoyed in this journey of reaching out to the less privileged, or adopting children when everybody's wondering? This is only a 5-year-old. Because when he's 9, maybe he's at 19 now, you're happy, excited. He's 19, he's in the army. But when they're young and sick and all, what has been your journey?
Well, obviously, the orphan thing is, it really is a calling, and it's not easy. I think a lot of times people, especially Christians, you think, well, I'm going to go adopt them and bring them into my family, and they're going to have the best environment, and they're going to grow up and be, perfect kids, and it's not that way. It's not that way oftentimes with natural children, but I think orphans are dealing with so much more, and it was very tough. We went through some quite difficult experiences with our children, but I had to keep going back to the fact that we felt the Lord had called us to adopt. And then we just saw in the circumstances, because we were over in Ukraine for several months and had visited different children, and we're getting kind of discouraged. But then the Lord just our last opportunity was going to this one orphanage in the city of Kherson that the Russians took and Ukraine recently took back, and just really opened our eyes and led us to these two boys. And it was very clear to my wife and to me that those were the two boys that we were to adopt. So we had to keep going back to that and reminding ourselves sometimes. And I'm sure for them too, there was lots of adjustments. We were not perfect parents at all, but so I just think it's when you feel that the Lord is in it, and then that encourages you along the way. But it's not easy. Yeah.
I like what you've said, that there are hurdles on the way, because you're out to do a good thing. You're setting out to say, look, I'm going to make impact.
Yeah.
And immediately you're told, you're discouraged. And it's amazing to hear your story. And what about, I can almost imagine how it would be like to adopt a child from a different country. Because I know in our local country, to even adopt a child in Kenya, you need to follow certain rules and certain legal aspects that can be processed. But how was it from a different country to another country?
Well, it was very hard, and each country, as you say, is different in its regulations. And I know Ukraine has changed too since 2009. But I guess our situation was perhaps a little more complicated because my wife, as I mentioned, is Taiwanese, and we speak Chinese at home and eat Chinese food, and so they were coming into a family that was kind of mixed already, and they didn't like Chinese food, which I never understood. They were potatoes and pizza people, but it was still beautiful, and even we had the privilege of going back to Taiwan a number of times, and they did really well. Yeah, and in fact, the younger boy just loves Taiwan, so it worked out.
That's nice to know.
Yeah.
Any other story that you have in reaching out to the orphans? Apart, you mentioned about the orphan ministry.
Promise,
yes.
Well, I'd like to go back to what I said about Ukraine, because it's become very, very obvious that the Lord positioned CBN in such a way to really be able to make a big difference during this terrible tragedy that's happening in Ukraine right now. Because we had set up all these centers and work with orphanages and set up like kind of halfway houses for kids that as they age out of the orphanage at 16, they had a place to go to become adults, in effect. And so we were working through partnerships and through some of our own ministries that we set up throughout Ukraine. And then this war happened. And all of a sudden we were able to make use of those contacts and those offices, those works that we already had, and use them to bless people throughout, in their neighborhoods, in their cities, in their provinces. And we've actually set up. We have a warehouse now in Warsaw, Poland, and we have one right across from the Medica border that has been very well known. Talked a lot about the border between Poland and Ukraine, and we have two warehouses in Ukraine itself. And we've been shipping relief goods into Ukraine and of course, purchasing in the country as well to distribute to Orphans Promise centers. So in retrospect, I mean, you hate what's happened in Ukraine, but to be able to reach out to the Ukrainians at this time is just such an amazing privilege for all of us.
Wow. I know the CITAM, the church that hosts Hope TV, did raise some funds at some point to try and reach out to the church in Ukraine. But hearing your story is different because it demystifies. At times when you hear these guys are fighting, you almost think, okay, fine, you guys sort yourselves out. But when you think about real people, real pain, and real situation, and trying to make a difference, that is really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And hearing your story, Kim, is amazing to know that. And I think maybe at this point you should encourage other men, because at times we think we may want to have so much resources, but there's something small we can do to reach out to somebody, either because they're less privileged or in a war or in pain. I don't know what you would say.
Yeah,
yes.
or I have my dad was a great example for me, and he used to go, I grew up in a small town, in a very rural town, 10,000 people, and he used to go almost every Sunday to visit prisoners in the local jail. It didn't take resources except time and love. So yeah, you don't need to have a lot of money to start. You just use what the Lord has put in your hands. It can be time, it can be money, it can be some kind of expertise, and any of that, or all of the above.
All of the above. No, thank you. I think why we love your story, Kim, is because, as you said earlier, people think you can make only impact when you can be seen. And sometimes some of the most impact stories are not really seen. They don't go into print, they don't go into media, they don't go see you. but you've gone to see a prisoner, you've reached out to someone, you've adopted a child over here. And I want you to really encourage men to go out and do that. Let
right.
Adams make a difference, because I think the call more is we want to make a difference in our own home, in our own family, which is good, and as a priest in our family. But what about the society, about the kingdom? What about the thing about people less privileged? And I love that story. I love your story.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else you could say? Some nice stories that could just encourage a guy who is thinking, I like the idea, but I don't want to do it.
I guess one of my favorite things is, and it was after I came to CBN, but Dr. Robertson had the idea of going and producing TV specials. So it's not the weekly programs that we usually produce, but special programs, and then airing them in prime time. And we did that in Central America, and then Argentina, and then we did something like that in the Soviet Union, and that was the result. That was what I saw when I joined CBN, and that it really attracted me. But then we wanted to do something similar in Africa, and we decided to do it in the country of Nigeria in 1997. And of course, Nigeria at the time, it was under a pretty strict Islamic government, and it just seemed like, how are you going to broadcast programs all across the country in prime time in this
Islamic country?
Yeah. But God opened the door, and we were able to produce. Victor Oladikin was very involved in the production of some of those programs, and we were able to produce them, and we were able to get them on the Nigerian television administration chain of channels across the country. Through some very miraculous circumstances. And we did surveys afterwards, and it showed that literally millions of people watched our programs and accepted Christ. And even today, when I go back to Nigeria, and I've been there 50 plus times now, stop counting.
Nigerian.
But yeah, I love some of the foods and things, and I love the people. But even to this day, I run into people that remember those programs. So for me to have played a small role in something that really has had an impact for God's kingdom for eternity, but that people still remember to this day, and it still is meaningful to them. For me, that was very, very special.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kim. Allow me to ask you more like a personal question, really, because you've done amazing things outside we can see. But what is it that is, as a personal, from a personal level, you've been able to do to equip yourself so that you're able to deliver so much, to be able to travel across the countries, deliver high quality programs, and involved and respond to the needs of so many people? You are talking about maybe more, not just Africa, more continents, for example.
Sure.
And you're trying so hard to impact them. What do you do personally that then prepares you to be able to do all these things?
Well, in some ways, and I don't say this arrogantly, but in some ways I feel the Lord prepared me for this, because I've always had a heart for the nations. I had traveled quite a bit before. I went to Taiwan, and then I lived in Taiwan, as I said, for over 7 years. And then later my wife and I lived in Hong Kong for several years. And I just am very fascinated by different foreign cultures and meeting people. I love meeting people in different cultures and countries. And that's not everybody. I've worked with people before that they fly into a country and they sit in their hotel, and they ask the people to come to their hotel to meet with them, and then they go into the coffee shop and have a salad or something, and then they fly to their next destination. And that's not who I am. I really enjoy getting out in the country, and of course running. I love to run in country because I feel you can see a lot more that way. So in some ways, I think the Lord prepared me for that. But honestly, at CBN, we're so blessed because I'm not the one producing the TV programs. I'm not the one that's directly doing the Orphans Promise work. I just get to help in delivering that excellence to the different countries we work with, and the people that we work with on the ground. For me, that's perhaps one of the greatest joys of working with CBN is the people that I work with in the different countries, because you know, America has its issues, but it's a pretty easy place to work and to live. But then you go to a country like Nigeria or others, and they're working under very, very difficult circumstances, and yet they're so dedicated and they're so resourceful, and they're so passionate about sharing the good news. And I get to work with those people, and I get to provide them with tools and, yes, some finances and other things that help them to do their job and what they're called to do. So for me, that's the really special thing about working at CBN.
Oh, nice. I picked two things from there that I would want to allow to just pursue a little bit more about the team. How do you recruit or raise up the team? Do you invite people? Because you seem to have a really wonderful team. How do you get this team to be part? I think the other part that you mentioned that me could answer is excellence. You seem to really be passionate about excellence. So excellence and team, how does that work? Especially in a Christian setup.
Yeah, I mean, every place we work is a little bit different, but a lot of times we start out working with like an individual, or maybe it could be an organization. Usually it's an individual we've identified. For example, in Nigeria, we work with a pastor, a Nigerian pastor who had come to Regent University, which was next door to us. And we started talking to him, and he was committed to going back to Nigeria. And we said, hey, could you kind of work with us? And what would that look like? And so it started very, very small. And then as opportunities, he would identify opportunities, and we'd say, yeah, we need to do them. And we'd look for resources, financial resources to do that. And it just kind of grew from there. So in my experience, I would say usually it's identifying a person that you feel is the right one from the Lord to start things, and then working with that person to grow, and sometimes giving guidance, because at CBN we definitely have our own way of doing things. For example, we're not really a big top-down ministry where we believe in people at every level can make a great contribution, and so we want something that's a little bit more egalitarian, but not everybody has that mindset. You know, some places it's like, well, I'm the boss, and this is the way we're doing it. And so bringing some concepts that we think are what makes CBN special. And certainly, like on the accounting side, we have try to have the highest degree of integrity and documentation and all of that, and that's grown over the years. So it's contributing those kind of things, but working with the people that have the local knowledge and the local the passion for sharing Christ with their own people.
Well, talk of local knowledge, and you talked about. Do you speak Chinese?
Mandarin, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to learn that?
Well, as I said, I thought I'd go there and learn in 2 years, and
Yes.
it didn't happen. I was there 7 years, and I felt like I was learning the whole time, and probably still am. I've probably forgotten a lot now because I don't live there. But yeah, I think after 2.5 years, I was feeling pretty comfortable in conversations. But it's a challenging language because, as you probably know, there's no alphabet.
Yes.
Yeah, so every single character, you have to memorize it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've it's almost like you have to draw the characters, and I'm a terrible artist. So, of course, today I was learning in pre-computer days.
Yes.
Now with computers, it's so much easier to learn.
No, because I think it's very fascinating from the alphabet and what I'm more keen on is what really drove you to learn the language. Maybe that would be more. Did you just learn because you're living and working in Taiwan, or there was a reason why?
No, I've been interested in languages for really, I guess, since I started to travel internationally. I had the real privilege when I was 15, 16, maybe. My father took my family and me to the Holy Land. We went to Rome and Athens, Greece, and Cairo, and then spent quite Amman, Jordan, and then Israel, of course. And it was just during that couple weeks, however long the trip was, that ran into so many different people from different nationalities. I'm sure you know in Israel there's tourists from everywhere, and I was just fascinated by all the different languages being spoken. And so I think it's something that I've been interested in. And I really wanted to learn a language that wasn't European. So that's why I chose Taiwan. Yeah, because it's you could learn. Taiwan had it was attractive because you could learn Mandarin Chinese, and you could teach English to survive, which of course is important too. So I taught English for a couple of years while I was studying, and then I went into business. And, yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm interested. So did this help in getting your wife now that you're speaking the language? But anyway, has it been helpful for you in ministry, the added language, a local language, if I may use that word?
Oh, for sure. Because I speak Spanish as well, and I worked in Latin America for many of my years at CBN. I don't as much anymore, but yeah. And we were trying. CBN has had humanitarian work in China, mainland China. We've done some things in Taiwan over the years, and so yeah, definitely it's. And I just think anytime you learn a language, you're learning a different culture, and it's helping you to become more international and able to adapt and understand and even like the challenge of learning about other cultures. So I think language learning can help in all of that as well.
Wow, no, thank you. I know we are discussing Adam in the marketplace, and some of these things that you're really sharing are so useful, learning a language, learning the local foods. Did you say you like local foods in Nigeria?
I do, all over the world.
Because I think that is totally helpful. And I think this is something Adam can do and excel in the space that they're in, because you don't need to additional extra thing. You just need to learn the language, like their people's foods, to be able to become a better minister. Are there anything that you can share from your experience as operations director that you can say, look, if you're running a business or you're in a marketplace or you are, not involved directly in ministry, but you can do to impact the kingdom or impact the society? Do you have anything that you want to share?
I think it's probably pretty obvious, but if the Lord places you in a business, in the marketplace, yes, I think you need to do your very best for your employer. Use all your talents, because I think that if you slack off and think, well, my main thing is I'm going to share Christ or something, but you're not doing the excellent work, how is that going to be a good example? So I think that you need to use your best talents, your best efforts to bless your employer. And at the same time, be there as a friend, as a confidant, an encourager for other people, and through those relationships to have a chance to share with them the good news about Christ.
No, it's amazing you say that, because apparently there are places that people have a misconception that if you're a Christian, then you are not excellent, you are mediocre. Because you just want to go down, maybe these people think maybe you just want to go down and pray, or just want to wish things over. But looking at you as operation director and insisting on excellence, that's something different, because if all Christians would learn to be excellent from wherever they are, it's just as Adams, whatever you do, don't be mediocre, be excellent. And that is as a ministry. And I think there's one vocation, or rather one religious organization that believes that you can actually serve God by using your vocation. Mm-hmm. So as an OD, for example, then you do very well and be the best OD that you can. And that is ministry, because other people then can look at that. There's something else you mentioned about, I think which you reminded me about Christ. You say, who lights a lamp and puts it on the bushel?
Right,
everybody
exactly.
puts it on the table.
Yeah.
So why would you hide it? So we can shine out there in the marketplace, shine in raising funding, shine in continents, learning languages, as you've told us today. I think that can truly make a great impact. Any other parting shots, Kim, you want to share? Our time is running out, unfortunately.
Well, I just, I've been coming to Africa for so many times, and I really love it. And I've been to Kenya, very special place. And I was going to mention that Turning Point, TPI, we actually started it very specifically because it seemed like in so many cases there is bad news coming from Africa. Television in the U.S., the news, Africa wasn't mentioned unless there was some disaster or something. And even one African country talking about another, oftentimes it was the same way. And to us, it just seemed like such a shame because there's so much positive things in Africa. You know, the wonderful, vibrant cultures and music and things happening in business. And so we wanted to be able to highlight and share those, and as well as sharing about Jesus Christ. So that was kind of the what started the Turning Point or TPI program. So for me, that was very special, and the fact that we're 25 years and we're still airing the program, it's been quite a blessing to be part of that.
That means that many stories that you can share for 25 years. Too many good stories. No, thank you so much, Kim. And I know we're coming to the close. I could ask you to, if you will, pray for certain key people that we have mentioned in the conversation. The people that, for example, maybe are in the place of making a decision and say, look, do I adopt a child or not? If you could pray for them because you have experience, you've been there, that would be amazing. And there are people that listening to us today and say, look, I'm struggling, they're underprivileged and nobody's reaching out to them. That we pray as well that maybe a certain Adam or Eve can just reach out to that person and put an arm, just say, well, you guys are reaching out to Ukraine as well, and just encourage them. Just if you could pray out.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Lord, I just thank you for this tremendous privilege to be here today with Kissinger and with Hope TV. And we just, I ask you to bless Hope TV, Lord, and that they would continue to be a light and an example to the whole nation of Kenya, Lord, that they would just be an encouragement to this whole nation. And Lord, we do pray for people who might be considering adoption. I know it's not for everybody, but I think it's very much in your word that you have such a heart for orphans and widows as well. And so we just ask for people to be open to considering that. And that if they're open, Lord, that you would just guide them to the right children and the right circumstances, provide the finances needed to adopt, Lord. And also, as Kissinger was saying, we just ask for people to be Christians to step up and step out in more ways to really reach the underprivileged of society. Lord, there's so many people that just need a helping hand, a hand of friendship, a hand of love, Lord. And I pray that more people would be open and just open their hearts to how you want to use them, Lord. It can be in big ways, it can be in small ways. And we know that the big ways oftentimes start with just small steps of obedience. And so we pray for people that they'd be willing to do this and really be a blessing to their society, Lord. And I pray all this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Kim. It was a
you.
great pleasure. And thank you, Adam and Eve, for joining us in this conversation today. Adam, there you have it. You are a priest in the marketplace. You've been called to make a difference in a small way. Not in the biggest of ways, but in that small way. And you look at opportunities and scout for ways that you can make impact because you are a priest in the marketplace. And if you continue to engage us as well, if you joined us on 2093 or 0717 400 555, or just go to a comment section of our YouTube pages and drop in a comment. Let's hear from you. Or you can just tweet at #AdamsCave. #AdamsCave. And this has been Adam's Cave, and it's now time to leave the cave. So please join us again next week for another very exciting conversation as we consider another topic. We look forward to being with you again in the only station where you can look and live, and only station where you can listen and live. I've been your host, Kissinger Kiprotich, and I'm glad to see you again next week.